I made some comments in the beginning about the groups and the people that we're honoring today. We're now going to hear from them, and I want to call upon Lynn Lee to introduce the next panel. And just to let you know that Lynn oversees the grants program that the NED has for human rights in North Korea. It's a very broad and impressive program. The grantees that we're honoring represent the categories of the work that we do. And Lynn, I want to invite you maybe to come up and to introduce them and to explain what those categories are.
Thank you again for coming. Where is Roberta? I just want to say that what you said about the U.S. stands for, human rights is what U.S. stands for, and that's who we are. It's our history and ideas. It really resonated with me, so thank you. And I think this is why we're doing what we're doing and why we have these wonderful organizations here that we're honoring. Carl Gershman and a number of other speakers provided detailed introductions to our 4 awardees, and you also have the descriptions of their work and bios of the speakers. So I think I'm just going to make a very quick comment about each speaker who will come forward, and then introduce our moderators so that Josh can have more time for this discussion and perhaps take some questions from the audience. Can I ask Sungju to come forward? Okay, never mind. Before Sungju comes up, I just want to say that this panel is going to be about the civil society effort to engage with North Korean people and empower them to determine their future for themselves. So the North Korean human rights movement has been really working for the advancement of human rights of North Korean people for the last 20 years. And here are some of the wonderful organizations who've been part of that movement. And so I just want to start with Sungju Lee, who's here, sitting next to Josh. He is a defector and author of the book called Every Falling Star, The True Story of How I Survived and Escaped North Korea. It's a wonderful book. I hope you'll have a chance to read it. He's been with Citizens Alliance for North Korean Human Rights for many years, at various capacities as a program participant, trainer, speaker, and now as a fundraiser for rescue work that Citizens Alliance has been carrying out. And just one anecdote, he has recently got married a few weeks ago, and he has donated some of the cash gifts that he received for his wedding to rescue a number of North Korean defectors in China. So that's how committed he is to human rights in North Korea. And the next person I want to introduce, and perhaps he doesn't need an introduction because you have seen him and you remember him from the 2018 State of Union. Ji Sung-ho, who's Sung-ho, could you raise your hand so that would So Sung-ho and I met in 2009, and I was really impressed by his story of defection, despite that he's physically disabled. He's missing an arm and leg from a train accident in North Korea. But what he said was his vision was to work with young defectors to turn from feeling like victims to defenders of North Korean people. So in 2010, he and other young defectors decided that they would start an organization to empower themselves as well as the other young North Koreans to become voices, advocates, and defenders of North Korean people. And his organization now is one of the leading defector-run organizations in South Korea. So please welcome Ji Sung-ho. And Mr. Lee Kwang-bak is the president of Unification Media Group. It's a consortium of what were previously known as Radio Free Chosun, Open Radio North Korea, and Daily NK. It's a very special media organization because they provide timely and reliable news into North Korea for North Korean people through radio, but they also share with international community the voices of North Korean people, their thoughts and their opinions through its online newspaper, Daily NK. So they have this comprehensive cycle of providing information to the international community as well as inside North Korea. And I just want to mention that he was one of the first activists to advocate for and begin the free flow of information effort for North Korean people. So, Mr. Lee Kwang-baek, welcome. So Hubert, who's sitting in the middle, is the executive director and founder of Transitional Justice Working Group, which works to collect, document, and visualize evidence of crimes against humanity in North Korea. He was inspired by the COI report, which recommended the need for a groundwork to lay the groundwork for creating advanced frameworks to address human rights violations and advocating for justice and the rights of North Korean victims. But before he founded his organization, he was with the Citizens Alliance for North Korean Human Rights for 13 years, and he received extensive training and guidance and mentorship from the woman who's sitting actually in the audience, Ms. Kim Young-ja. She is a founding member of Citizens Alliance for North Korean Human Rights, and she is one of the reasons why Young-han, or Hubert, is one of the most effective human rights activists in South Korea. So, but Young-han, welcome. So now to the moderator. This panel will be moderated by Josh Brogan, who is a columnist for the Global Opinions section of the Washington Post and a political analyst with CNN. Previously, he has covered foreign policy and national security for Bloomberg View, Newsweek, The Daily Beast, Foreign Policy Magazine, Congressional Quarterly, Federal Computer Week magazine, and the Asahi Shimbun, which is a Japanese newspaper. He was a 2011 finalist for the Livingston Award for the Young Journalist and the 2011 recipient of the Interaction Award for Excellence in International Reporting. Josh, thank you for agreeing to moderate this session. I hope you'll enjoy this panel, and now to you.
Thank you, Lynn. Give a round of applause. Is this on? Can you hear me? All right. Thanks, Lynn. Thank you, Carl and Jane and Jody and everybody else at NED who has worked not just to put on today's program, but works every day to elevate these important issues and help governments, academics, activists, and journalists do their jobs. And I can personally attest to the value of that work. You know, I don't think it's a particularly controversial thing to say that, you know, right now these values are, and these programs and these institutions are facing challenges and even under attack, both abroad and here at home. And you know, when we look at the Trump administration, we cover the Trump administration, I think a fair word to use would be is inconsistent. Okay, we have many positions related to human rights in the administration simply not filled. We have conflicting statements coming from senior officials. And at the same time, we have a lot of institutions that are either government or government supported that are working to fight for these values every day. And that sort of brings us to where we are today. Lynn mentioned the State of the Union. And let me just quote what President Trump said about North Korean human rights at the State of the Union. Quote, "We need only to look at the depraved character of the North Korean regime to understand the nature of the nuclear threat it could pose to America and our allies." Now, here's President Trump yesterday on North Korean human rights. Look, he has to be a rough guy. All right, so in that inconsistency, there's a lot of room for interpretation and a lot of room for people who care about these values to do the work. I want to use this panel to build on what we heard earlier this morning, and we heard, I identified a few key questions. One, does our current engagement with the Kim regime benefit the North Korean people by bringing them prosperity that will increase their standard of living? Or does deal-making with the regime only empower their oppressors and therefore condemn them to more suffering? Is the Trump administration including the rights and aspirations of the North Korea people savvily? What more can they do? What can others do? And, you know, what can we do to connect with the North Korean people directly. We couldn't have a better panel. If you wanted to talk about those issues, these are the guys, all right? And we're lucky to have them here today. So I want to start by asking each of our panelists to react to what's going on in the news today, to react to what we saw over the last 2 days, our new historic engagement with the Kim Jong-un government. So first, let me start with you, Lee Sung-ju. If you could just tell us how you diffract the news through your prism. And
translate to other Korean speakers.
Sure. Okay, so we're going to pause here for a very quick, a quick translation for our panelists.
연두교서 말씀을 먼저 하셨는데요. 연두교서에서 이제 트럼프 대통령이 언급을 했던 북한 인권 문제 중요성에 대한 얘기를 했는데 지금 이제 어제 미국 정상회담이 열리고 나서는 인권 문제가 많이 좀 빠진 부분이 있습니다. 그래서 이제 북한에 대한 이제 개입이나 어떤 뭐 지원 이런 것들이 과연 북한의 전체 주민들에게 실제 도움이 될 것이라고 생각을 하는지 아니면 북한 정권에만 도움이 되고 오히려 상황이 더 나빠지도록 하는 과정으로 갈지 그런 생각들이 다 다를 수가 있겠습니다. 우리가 이제 그런 좋은 변화를 가져오기 위해서 무엇을 할 수 있을지 또 다른 사람들이 또 무엇을 할 수 있을지 그런 것들을 좀 살펴보려고 합니다. 그래서 최근에 이제 북한을 둘러싼 관계들이 바뀌고 있는 상황에서 요즘 느끼고 있는 생각들을 각자 좀 들어보려고 합니다.
Perfect. All right. Please.
Before I came here, I read North Korean newspapers through internet. They announced that before Kim Jong-un arrived in Pyongyang, they announced that the summit, and also they announced that the agreement between the United States and North Korea clearly, which means that Kim Jong-un tried to use this summit to promote himself because he's young. He has been like in the power for 8 years or 7 years, and still many people believe that his power is really stable, but in my perspective, no, it's not that stable because he can have power in Pyongyang, but outside of Pyongyang, many people pretend to respect him in front of people, but in their private life, they don't respect him at all. So he tried to use this summit to promote his power. So in that case, this summit is really good for its government. And then on the other hand, also at the same time, we just met, President Donald Trump just met Kim Jong-un, and then there will be another meeting, maybe next month or following month. But we have to talk about human rights issue, because human rights issue is for its people, it's North Korean people inside of North Korea. So we don't talk about those issues, then North Korean people might think that, well, United States and our government is the same, because they try to use us. So, well, in my perspective is that that's why we need to talk about human rights issue, and also we give them a message to North Korean people saying we care your rights. We try to improve condition in North Korea. Then that strategy is really important because we can divide North Korean government and ordinary people. So this strategy is really important. And then after many years later, unification happened on the Korean Peninsula, and then North Korean people might ask you, South Koreans and United States American citizens, what did you do when we were in North Korea? What did you do when we were under dictatorship? Then we have to say something to them. Well, United States citizens, we pay tax. That tax goes to NGOs who is working for your rights. So you guys have to say something to them. Then their frustration goes to its own government, Kim Jong-un regime, not to us. Then we can be friends with them easily. So that's my opinion.
Just to quickly follow up, many of you may not know this. Yesterday, the Washington Post editorial board was lucky enough to host this exact group, and I remember you were saying in our meeting about how the engagement, the talks, the negotiations might be an opportunity to press for certain things, demolishing prison camps or gulags. Talk about what, as we go forward with this long process, how exactly can human rights be interjected, and who should do that?
Well, actually, before we talk with North Korea, United States has to have principles. They have to set the principles, and then don't change the principles. Well, for example, Bush administration, first terms, it was really strong to North Korea, right? But second term, it was really mild to North Korea. They changed their principles. North Korea knows that. They try to use that. So please, I'm just beg your president, please don't change the principle, and then please include human rights within that principles. And then, for example, okay, North Korea wants United States embassy in Pyongyang, then United States might say that, well, we can open embassy in your country, but you guys have to demolish your gulags and prison camps. We cannot open our embassy in a country which kind of oppress its own people. So we needed that kind of principles in the talk between United States and North Korea.
Thank you very much. Hubert?
Yeah.
Same question.
Yeah. I'd like to make sure.
Can you turn your mic on?
Yeah. I'd like to make it short, yeah, for other speakers here. So at first, we were embarrassed a bit or disappointed, but quickly we changed our mindset that looking back the past 20 years of our work, it took time to reach the point to see the COI and the UN resolutions, and the pointing about the top leadership is responsible for that. It took more than 20 years. So this is a very quick changes of the environment of our work, but we should stay positive and try to find a way, innovative way, or to find the momentum, how to put our agenda. And so it's now our turn, and also civil society organizations' role is more and more important. And also the more important role can be expected from the media outlets to keep raising the issues, and that not yet the agenda is dropped from the table in the following discussions.
Can I ask you to talk a little bit more about transitional justice? Exactly what needs to be done as if we are going to open up North Korea to ensure that as we do that, we can account for the crimes of the past and then try to apply some justice and then hopefully some healing.
Yeah. It also took time for us to clearly understand that what is the most important aspect of applying transitional justice concept. It is really unfamiliar term, a concept to the other people or other citizens. But the clear idea we stick to is that truth-seeking is the foundation for justice and also reconciliations and forgiveness. So we stick to that point, truth-seeking and documentations. That leads us to do the serious documentations. Documentations, what we do is mapping the serious crime scenes, where the bodies are buried, where they are killed, and where is this documentary evidence. So that is not only for bringing justice for the perpetrators, but also for the victims, to help them to find the remains of their beloved people. So this is what is for, is that not just for preparing for the future. The current meaning of this is to the regime in Pyongyang, is that sending out a signal that all of your action is properly and carefully documented. And so they're increasing their, we hope, the anxiety for the accountability, and to lead them to begin thinking of change their course of actions. The second thing is to engage with North Korean defectors. At the moment, we cannot talk directly to the general population in North Korea. So, but in Korea, there's more than 30,000 defectors already living with us. And then, as we try to engage them through this mapping work, this is not just as information gathering. This is awareness raising process to help them to understand they are the right holders. They have the right to demand something now and in the future. Yeah, that's our goal and approach this. Thank you.
Thank you. Ji Sung-ho, you were at the State of the Union. I think you also met with Vice President Pence when I was there in South Korea around the Olympics. Now, as you see the U.S. policy moving very, very quickly, how do you analyze that situation?
예, 인권은 이제 포기할 수 없는 우리의 중요한 가치라고 생각합니다.
I think the most important thing is to absolutely not forgo bringing up the issue of human rights.
우리는 북한 주민들을 사랑해서 이제 이 자리에 왔고 그들의 인권 개선을 위해서 이제 노력하고 있습니다.
The reason that we came here today and all the work that we continue to do is solely based on improving human rights conditions in North Korea.
저는 이제 영광스럽게도 올해 이제 연두교소에 이제 초청되는 그런 영광을 이제 지냈습니다.
Sungju, can you take that?
스테이트 오브 유니언. 예. 이제 그것은 이제 저에게 개인적으로는 영광이었지만 또한 이제 북한 주민들에게는 미국 정부가 또한 이제 미국 의회가 당신들의 편이라는 것을 선포하는 그런 자리였습니다.
I was really honored to be a part of the State of the Union, but I do feel like there's still a long way that things need to go, and I think that Congress actually is where a lot of the action is happening in terms of improving North Korean human rights.
저는 이번 싱가포르 회담을 보면서 이제 생각든 것이 있습니다.
As far as the issue in Singapore goes with Trump and Kim Jong-un, I have some thoughts on that.
북한 인권의 이제 그 책임자인 이제 김정은이 가장 두려워하는 것이 무엇인가?
What is the most important thing that we need to think about in terms of human rights regarding Kim Jong-un?
역시 인권이라는 사실을 알게 되었습니다.
Yeah, human rights is very important.
연두교소에서 북한 인권을 언급하지 않았다면 이번 싱가포르 서밋이 이제 만들어지는 데는 중요한 이제 이번 서밋이 이제 만들어진 데에는 이제 연두교소에서 했던 그 인권 문제가 중요한 그 위치를 차지했다고 생각합니다.
Good. Yeah. Or Sungju.
Well, this Donald Trump mentioned the human rights issue in a State Union address, which was really important role in this summit.
그래서 이 시점에서 우리가 이제 무엇을 봐야 하는가 하는 거죠.
So what do we have to do at this point about that issue?
북한의 이제 김정은이냐 아니면 2,500만의 이제 북한 주민들이냐.
Is this solely about Kim Jong-un, or is it about the 25 million people that are currently living in North Korea?
우리는 당연히 이제 북한 주민들을 사랑하죠.
Obviously, we need to focus on the people that are living inside North Korea, the North Korean people.
이번 이제 북미 정상회담을 통해 가지고 이제 뭐 여러 가지 일들이 이제 만들어질 수는 있다고 생각합니다.
We can use this summit as an opportunity to galvanize attention and keep shining the light on the North Korean people, these 25 million citizens.
핵폐기는 당연히 해야 되는 것이었고요.
Of course, we have to press them on denuclearization and giving up their nuclear arsenal.
미국과 이제 국제사회가 북한 당국에 뭐 대한 지원이라든가 이것이 인권 유린이 지속되는데 이어지는 데 쓰이면 안 된다고 생각합니다.
Yeah, Sungju.
Well, this summit has to be used by North Korea in order to oppress their own people.
과거에도 이제 뭐 많은 지원들이 이루어졌지만 저희처럼 뭐 시골에 있는 사람들이 혜택을 볼 수 있는 것은 아니었다는 것은 분명합니다.
North Korea has received packages and aid in the past, and this has not gone to people that are living in the far-flung provinces. This is going predominantly to people in Pyongyang or major cities. So again, that's something that needs to be considered, depending on what happens going forward.
우리는 이제 그것을 중요하게 볼 필요가 있고요.
We really, this is a very, very important thing that we need to focus on, no matter what happens.
그리고 이제 이번 서밋에 이제 그 김정은이 싱가포르에 오게 된 또 하나의 이유가 있습니다.
And there's actually another reason that Kim Jong-un came to Singapore as well that I'd like to mention.
북한의 이제 김정은은 이제 그 정책에 이제 실패를 했죠.
To some extent, it's because 누구 실패했다고요?
정책 실패.
Kim Jong-un 실패.
그러니까 북한 주민들에게 이제 5년 안에 먹는 문제를 해결하고 하겠다고 이제 약속했었습니다.
The reason that I feel that Kim Jong-un came to this summit partially is because his policies have failed. He has yet to ameliorate the food insecurity problem for the North Korean people.
그러나 이제 북한은 계속 어려운 상황에 처하게 되었고.
North Korea continues to be, an impoverished country, and people are living in pretty ghastly conditions.
어떻게 해서나 그것을 이제 풀어야만 하는 이제 숙제를 안고 있습니다.
So it's incumbent upon us to use this summit and think about this to figure that out. And Kim Jong-un is also under that same pressure.
결국은 이제 인권 문제와 이제 그 북한 안에 이제 정책의 그 주민들이 그 뭐 정책 실패로 인해 가지고 저는 이제 그 자리에 나왔다고 생각하고요.
So he thinks that because his policies have thus far failed, he's got to figure something out, and that's why he's coming to, try to extract new packages and concessions from, the U.S. and the international community to fix this problem inside, a problem that he himself cannot fix.
예, 회담에서 뭐 여러 이야기가 오고 갔지만 결과적으로 이제 북한 주민과 이제 북한 정권을 갈라봐야 되고 또한 이제 그것이 예.
So, I have so many different thoughts about the summit, obviously, but the thing that I really want to drive home is that we do need to look, divide the government and divide the people, look at them differently, and put the focus on the people that are living inside North Korea. What can we do for them?
예, 그 뭐 지원되는 것이 어떻게 쓰여질까는 우리가 다시 한번 고민해봐야 됩니다.
And really think about how we can support these people, and if there is support that comes, how are we going to ensure that it goes to the right people, not the government?
Excellent. Thank you. Lee Kwang-bak, you may not know this, but he runs an organization that not only provides tons of information directly to North Korean people, but also collects tons of information directly from North Korean people. It's really unique. So I'd like to ask you, what are you hearing? How do the North Korean people view what's going on? How do they view their leadership right now? And from what we can understand, what would they say to us if they had the chance?
여기 계신 분들은 뭐 이제 북한으로 정보를 보내는 건 이제 이해하셨는데 북한에서 정보를 가지고 나와서 알리는 일도 하고 있습니다. 최근에 벌어진 상황과 관련해서 또 북한의 주민들은 지금 상황을 어떻게 이해하고 있는지, 또 그것을 우리가 그런 정보들을 북한에서 나오는 이야기들이 있으면 우리가 그걸 어떻게 이해를 하고 해석을 하면 좋을지 그런 것들 좀 공유해 주시면 좋겠습니다.
네, 일단 북미 정상회담에 대한 제 개인적 의견을 먼저 말씀드릴게요.
I'm going to give you a personal opinion. I just want to make that clear that it's my personal opinion about the summit.
여러분 다 알 거예요. 북한 인권운동가들은 기대를 많이 하는 편입니다.
For most North Korean activists, as you would probably be well aware, we didn't have a lot of expectations going into this summit to begin with.
북미 정상회담을 위해서 싱가포르에 가는 트럼프 대통령에게까지 저는 기대가 좀 있었습니다.
I 기대하거든요.
트럼프 대통령에게도 기대가 컸다고.
트럼프 자체?
We have a lot of expectation on President Donald Trump for the summit.
최소한 정상회담의 합의문에는 안 담길 수 있지만 트럼프 대통령이 말로는 두 가지를 요청해 주기를 바랬습니다.
했으면 좋겠다고. Looking, obviously, we've all talked a lot about how the declaration was pretty thin, but personally, I feel that verbally, at least, there's two main things that really should have been mentioned and can be mentioned going forward.
첫 번째는 반드시 CVID.
The first is, as we all know, he needs to push for CVID, complete, verifiable, irreversible denuclearization for North Korea.
그리고 두 번째는 정치범 수용소를 해체하지 않는 한 북미 관계가 정상적으로 발전할 수 없다.
The second is if, and this is sort of echoed from what Sungju said before, if the political prison camps are not dismantled inside North Korea, there can absolutely not normalization of relations between the U.S. and North Korea.
제가 그런 기대를 했다고 어떤 분에게 말씀드렸더니 기대가 너무 컸다고 저한테 답변해 주셨습니다.
So I was, I had a lot of expectations about that, but that didn't happen. But again, that's something that should be pressed going forward.
어제 정상회담에는 그런 얘기가 전혀 나오지 않았지만 그럼에도 불구하고 저는 몇 가지 가능성은 있다고 생각합니다.
I still think that, despite all of this, there is a lot of potential. I think there's a lot of potential points, as again was echoed by other panelists, of ways that we can use this summit.
일단 북한이 비핵화를 하겠다고 하니 행동을 할 때까지 집요하게 비핵화를 압박해야 된다고 생각합니다.
Until there's actual, tangible movement on denuclearization inside North Korea, we can absolutely not let up the pressure on the government. This is something that, if you lose the momentum, that's very problematic. So he feels that the pressure needs to be sustained.
그리고 두 번째는 북미 간의 북미 수교의 조건으로 정치범 수용소의 해체를 내걸었으면 좋겠습니다.
Again, the normalization of U.S.-DPRK relations absolutely has to be contingent on the closure of the political prison camps inside North Korea.
저는 어제 북미 정상회담으로 북미 회담이 끝난 게 아니었으면 좋겠습니다.
I feel like this yesterday should not, or the day before yesterday, should not be the end. This can only be seen as a beginning. And in terms of the summit, I see it as just a very brief step.
앞으로 이어질 다양한 실무회담 또는 제2차 또는 제3차 북미 정상회담에서 이 두 가지 문제를 반드시 해결했으면 좋겠습니다.
And especially, I feel that this potential summit going forward in the summer or any other subsequent meetings absolutely have to drive home these 2 points.
최근 북한에 있는 북한 주민들이 북미 정상회담을 바라보는 생각은 솔직히 다양합니다.
In terms of the question you asked about how North Korean citizens are perceiving this summit, there's as many different opinions as we share here in the U.S. That's how many different opinions exist among the North Korean people. There's a lot of variation.
그러나 대표적인 의견은 두 가지인 것 같습니다.
But there's two main areas that people fall into.
하나는 북미 회담이 잘 돼서 우리 경제가 좋아진다면, 그건 꼭 됐으면 좋겠다.
The first is, okay, well, if this summit goes well, then our economic situation is going to improve, and thereby our lives are going to improve. So there's some expectation there.
두 번째는 경제를 해주겠다고 말한 지가 벌써 언제부터 그랬는지 기억이 안 날 정도로 수십 년 동안 경제 좋아지게 해주겠다고 말을 했다. 그러나 지금까지 북한 경제는 좋아진 게 하나도 없다. 그래서 그걸 어떻게 믿을 수 있겠느냐 하는 부정적 의견도 분명히 있습니다.
And then, of course, just as with anybody else, there's a lot of skepticism. You've been saying for 20 plus years that you're going to improve the economy. In my opinion, nothing's gotten better. So why should I expect that this is going to change anything this time? I've heard it all before, basically.
Excellent. Thank you. Before we move on, I want to ask you a little bit more, Lee Kwang-baek. Tell us about how you get information into North Korea and how you get information out of North Korea. To the extent you feel comfortable.
북한으로 정보를 보내는 방법, 북한의 정보가 나오는 방법에 대해서 할 수 있는 범위까지 소개해 주시면 좋겠습니다.
네, 지금 저희가 하고 있는 방법을 소개해 드리겠습니다. 북한으로 정보를 넣는 방법은 지금 현재는 딱 두 가지입니다.
We have two main ways. I'll break them into separate components. The first is how do we get information into North Korea?
USB에 영화나 드라마 또는 K-팝을 실어서 북한 주민에게 전달하는 방법이 첫 번째입니다.
The main way, and we do engage in some of this, but other groups do as well, is USBs, CDs, DVDs, offline methods, using connections to get those into North Korea that are loaded, of course, with foreign content.
물론 거기에는 미국의 영화도 포함되는데 예를 들어서 마블 영화라든가 아니면 포스트 같은 영화 USB에 넣어서 북한은 보내면 북한 주민의 최소한 50%에서 많게는 80%의 주민이 시청할 수 있는 미디어 환경이 돼 있습니다.
You're putting his estimate is that between 50 and 80% of North Korean people would have at least have experienced seeing some sort of foreign film. Be it The Post is an example of a movie that's been going into North Korea these days. Marvel films are very popular, things like this. So most, the lion's share of the population would have had experience watching some foreign content like this.
문화 오락 프로그램은 그렇게 USB를 통해서 넣는 게 제일 좋지만 뉴스, 실시간으로 전달하는 정보, 뉴스를 그런 방식으로 보낼 수는 없다는 거죠.
So there's a lot of this coming in these offline methods, and those are very important. Entertainment, soft cultural content. You can't deny that those things are significant, but there's not a lot of news going in, and this is really, really important, particularly in offline methods, especially because, as we all know, there's no independent media inside North Korea.
뉴스라든가 아니면 인권, 민주주의 같은 이른바 교육 프로그램들은 현재는 라디오를 통해서 제공하는 방법이 가장 일반적입니다.
And so this is where the radio comes in, especially for getting civil society building content, things that focus on democratic ideals. All of these things are best coming in through the radio, and this is the best, most credible, real-time method to get information to the North Korean people.
북한에서 정보를 가져오는 방법, 현재 저희 데일리 NK가 쓰고 있는 방법은 딱 하나입니다.
And in terms of getting information out of North Korea, that's where Daily NK comes in. And this is the print leg of Unification Media Group.
중국과 북한 국경에서 대략 한 5km에서 6km, 길게는 한 뭐 그 이상일 수도 있는데 그 정도 되는 거리에서는 중국 전파, 전화 전파를 받을 수가 있습니다. 그래서
잠시만요.
네.
So the main way that we're communicating with these citizen journalists inside North Korea, these are people that are living in border areas. They're using smuggled Chinese phones to connect to cell phone towers on the border in China, with a range of about 5 to 6 kilometers. That can depend. That's how they're communicating with the outside world. These are not North Korean phones. These are smuggled illegal phones.
사실은 어제 워싱턴 포스트를 방문했는데 워싱턴 포스트에서 북한 주민의 반응이 궁금하다고 그래서 어제 새벽 저희들이 북한에 전화를 해서 북한 주민의 반응을 체크를 하기도 했습니다. 그 방법으로.
잠시만요.
네.
So we went to the Washington Post as you mentioned yesterday, and there was a lot of curiosity about what are North Korean people thinking about this summit. And so we, and with the help of the editor-in-chief Sang Young here in the audience, connected with a lot of different people in North Korea to try to get a pulse check on what they're thinking. In the early morning hours is generally when these things happen.
What are they thinking?
What are they thinking? I think a
Don't leave us
little bit
hanging.
from before. 근데
어떻게
그 주간 말씀해 주신가요? 그 주민 반응.
주민 반응이었던지.
빨리 얘기해 주세요.
예. 주민 반응 아직 제가 못 받았어요, 저기.
Actually, I wasn't the one who personally placed this call. When I say we, it's more of a collective thing. So actually, Sang-Young would have to speak to that. But there will be articles on Daily NK about it all this week. So urge you to check in for that.
Okay, stay tuned. Stay tuned. All right, I want to ask one more round of questions before I go to the audience, and I want to focus on this idea that the premise, according to the Trump administration, of this entire endeavor is that Kim Jong-un wants to open up his country economically, that prosperity is the key, that wealth is the key, that open markets and investment is the key. So I want to ask anyone who wants to answer, is that valid? Does that hold water? And then secondly, because the example that we have are these markets, are what's going on inside North Korea right now, what effect, from what you know and from what you've seen and from what you've heard, have the opening of these markets had? Has it led to more political liberalization? Has it led to more support of the regime or dissent against the regime? What does the data show?
뭐 지금 전체 상황을 다 봤을 때 이제 뭐 북한에 만약에 그 시장이나 뭐 경제 지원을 해줄 때에 그게 정말 이제 긍정적인 방향으로 갈지 아니면 또 부작용이 있을지 뭐 생각하는 바, 그리고 그런 시장에서 실제로 시장에서 어떤 현상들이 지금 있고 그게 뭐 북한의 정치적 자유를 이렇게 점진적으로 이끌어가는 방향으로 갈 것이라고 보는지, 그런 좀 자유로운 생각들을 뭐든지 생각이 있으면은 얘기할 수 있겠습니다.
네, 제 생각에는 이제 북한에 이제 변화가 없다 하고 보는 거는 이제 잘못된 생각인 것 같아요.
I think it would be wrong to say that there's been no change in North Korea.
북한에는 분명히 변화가 있었고요.
There's definitely change.
그 북한 주민들이 이제 민주주의적으로 쟁취한 첫 번째가 있습니다. 민주주의적으로 이제 본인들이 이제 챙긴 것이 이제 시장이라고 생각합니다.
North Korea's achieved markets on democracy way without any kind of struggle.
북한은 이제 시장을 열기를 이제 꺼려했었고 그것을 통제했었죠. 북한 당국은.
But originally when these markets sprung up, the authorities did crack down on them.
그리고 이제 결과적으로 이제 북한 시장을 열 수밖에 없게 되었습니다.
But eventually, these markets continued to proliferate, and then the government kind of had to let their hands go.
지금 이제 북한이 돌아가는 것은 이제 주민들이 알아서 시장을 통해 가지고 먹고 살고 있습니다.
So now, as most people would be aware, most people are very reliant on the markets for their livelihoods.
실은 주민들이 북한 당국을 믿지 않은 지가 오래된 것이죠.
So it's been some time now that the North Korean people don't really rely on their government, nor that they believe in the regime.
그리고 이제 북한 당국이 오래됐고 또한 이제 조금씩 이제 자기들이 그 자유로운 그 자유를 이제 찾으려고 노력하고 있습니다.
There's also some degree of autonomy and independent thinking among North Korean people. They begin to kind of find their own way and believe in themselves, no longer believe in the regime. I am responsible for my own existence, and how can I do that? And this is a very different way of thinking than in the past. So the mindset has changed. The individualism, I guess, would be the best way to put it.
제가 이제 2006년도에 탈북할 당시 이제 우리가 북한 당국에 이야기했던 것 있습니다.
So I defected.
북한 안에 탈북하기 전에 이제 북한에서 이제 살 때 북한 당국에 이제 우리 살점을 건들지 말라는 그것을 이제 이야기했는데 다시 말하면 무엇인가면요. 그러니까 우리를 터치하지 말아달라. 우리 삶을 터치하지 말아달라 당국이 이런 이야기를 했었죠.
As long as North Korean government do not touch it's their own people, it's okay.
그렇게 이제 이야기할 수 있었던 것은 북한 당국이 약속을 지키지 못했기 때문에 그에 대해서 이제 이제 그것을 이제 가하지는 못했었죠.
Because North Korean people request that sentence to the government, the reason that North Korean government announced that we will give you better economic life, but they couldn't kind of make that promise real.
그것이 지금 이제 쭉 이제 축적돼서 이제 계속 오고 있는 것입니다.
That trend is, continued to grow exponentially.
그래서 결과적으로는 이제 시장이 이제 북한 이제 주민들을 먹여 살리지 이제 당국은 아니고요. 당국이 먹여 살리는 건 아니고요.
Again, so the authorities are not the ones providing for the people. The people are providing for themselves through these markets.
지원이 이제 절실히 필요한 것도 이제 북한 주민들이 아니라 북한 당국이 생존을 위해서 이제 외화가 이제 필요한 것입니다.
성주.
외화가 이제 필요하고 이제 뭐 가장 이제 외부로서 이거 지원을 필요로 하는 것은 이제 북한 주민들보다는 이제 북한 당국이라고 저는 생각합니다.
And North Korean people knows how to survive under sanction, but now so only the sector which the government sectors needs aid from outside of world, outside of North Korea.
김정은도 이제 이번에 나오면서 이야기했던 것이 우리의 체제 보장을 해달라 지금 그것인 거죠.
This is evident in the fact that he's, demanding that the sanctions be weakened. That's an obvious sign.
Excellent. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm not an expert in this market or this market system much, but I see the current situations when it comes to this market prosperity. There are the two sides of things. The one thing is, I think Kim Jong-un, this is not the North Korean ordinary people relying on market systems. Kim Jong-un himself is also relying on the system too. Because if he is not able to feed his loyal people or the surrounding him, and then there is no way for him to let them to squeeze people or exploit them, in a legally authorized way that, like as taxations, or there's some different way of taxation. So he is already depending on the market system. So that's why he cannot go back to the past time. The other side is that he may believe that, or that we're concerned about that it's Kim Jong-un. The time is at Kim Jong-un's side now because he gains more time in terms of this nuclear development. He just saved more time to have the second, the chance for that. But in a market system, or just, internally in North Korea, it might be the opposite because the North Korean people, other people also have much increased expectations. That they would be benefit soon, quickly from the summits. And so the increased expectations becomes quickly the political burden. People would be gradually or rather quickly impatient that nothing will gain, and then they would begin complaining or the dissatisfactions would be widespread. So in that sense, some delay of the provisions of the big money to the country, and then Kim Jong would be more and more desperate to manage his power to his people. So that's my thought.
Fascinating. So you're saying, so we have a conventional wisdom in Washington that, time is on Kim Jong-un's side. You're saying that might not necessarily be the case because now he's under domestic pressure to produce results. It's fascinating. We heard earlier today from Mike Green that, people assume that the Trump administration wants to go quickly, but actually it might be in President Trump's political benefit to drag it out. So I think it's a useful counterpart to sort of challenging our assumptions about who wants to do what.
Well, so many people think that market leads to political change. Economic achievement can lead a political change, but I believe that it doesn't always lead political change. Because one country can be changed. There are two things. First of all, people. First of all, alternative ideology. But North Korea, there is no alternative ideology. It's communist states. It's dictatorship. There is no democracy. That's why we have to send information about democracy and about human rights into North Korea. That's my one thing. And then also, the second one is that Kim Jong-un comes to a summit because I believe that he has strong kind of riots, not riots, strong kind of resentment from people, because Kim Jong-un hasn't solved economic kind of depression in North Korea. So that's why he came to a summit, because there's two things. First one is that without solving economic depression in North Korea, he will lose power, because you can see that 2009 there was a currency reform. Then Kim Jong-un faced Kim Jong-il time. Also, Kim Jong-un knew that they faced a huge kind of what is it? The turmoil, not turmoil. A huge kind of so many bad feelings from people towards their own government. So Kim Jong-un knows that. So that's why he has to solve economic problem in North Korea. That's why he needs some talk. But he never give up on his political power, like China. China has really good economy, right? But still, it's one party system. So North Korea thinks like that. So we'll see. Down the road, who knows? So, but I think Kim Jong-un never give up on his political power. So as long as there is political camps, also as long as there is the 3-generation punishment policy. If you made a mistake towards government, you will be punished by the government, also your parents or your son as well.
Interesting. So we heard in the earlier panel that there's evidence the Kim regime might be pursuing the China model or the Cuba model or the Vietnam model. Those are 3 very different models, and they lead to 3 very different conclusions about what to do. Lee Kwang-bak, you want to talk about the markets and the economy inside North Korea?
북한의 경제가 발전하면 북한 주민의 인권 상황도 나아질 가능성이 저는 매우 높다고 생각합니다.
I feel especially that if the economic situation improves inside North Korea, then the situation of human rights has a lot of potential to improve too. I see that possibility is very high.
다만 외부에서 경제 발전을 지원할 때 김정은한테 그냥 돈을 빌려주는 방식으로 지원하는 것은 바람직하지 않다고 생각합니다.
I think it would be better if we are to give an economic aid package to the North Korean authorities that it had conditions tied to it, as in it's borrowed money. It's not just a one-off dump of support.
수많은 기업들이, 글로벌 기업들이 북한에서 투자하고 경제적으로 성공할 수 있도록 하는 그런 방식으로 경제 발전을 지원하는 것이 효과적이라고 생각합니다.
I think it would be most effective, obviously, if we had a lot of international enterprises and businesses that would come in and have conditions that it would be successful for them, but it would also be successful in terms of the North Korean business environment. That would be the best way to ensure that would to improve these units.
이때 중요한 게 북한에서 경제 투자를 하고 경제 활동을 해야 되는 기업들이 북한 당국에 매우 집요하게 요구해야 될 점이 있다는 거죠.
And also, they would have to place pressure on the North Korean authorities. They would have to make demands. I want to do business here, but these are the conditions that I demand.
예를 들면 그런 거예요. 인터넷이 없으면 정상적인 경제 활동이 어렵다. 인터넷 하게 해달라.
I'm not, for example, if a business wants to come inside North Korea, they're going to need the internet, and they demand that they need the internet, and they would have to place that demand on the North Korean authorities. If you want our business, then we need the internet.
뭐 그 외에도 카드 결제 시스템 도입이 돼야 경제가 발전할 수 있다든가 아니면 북한 주민의 전화기와 글로벌 수많은 세계 사람들이 서로 전화 통화를 할 수 있게 해야 경제가 발전한다든가 이런 조건들을 저는 집요하게 내걸어야 된다고 생각합니다.
Again, there's a litany of these examples, but another one would be these people have to be able to communicate with the outside world, not just the internet, but placing international phone calls. I mean, these are conditions that one needs to have a successful business environment, and they're going to have to place that pressure on the authorities and not relent.
그래서 북한 사회의 경제 환경 또는 사회 환경도 다른 여타의 나라들, 정상적인 경제 활동을 하는 나라들과 비슷하게 어떻게 하면 만들어 갈 거냐가 굉장히 중요한 문제라고 생각합니다.
So again, this pressure is going to be placed on North Korean authorities to model, international norms, to become more like this so-called normal state that North Korea says that it's trying to become.
그리고 실제 그런 모델이 아니면 경제 발전은 저는 불가능하다고 생각합니다.
But unless that kind of model, is created inside North Korea, I don't see a lot of potential for the kind of economic change that we're all hoping for.
근데 이것은 수많은 연구가 돼야 될 것 같습니다. 저는 베트남 모델일지 아니면 중국으로 갈지 저는 알 수 없다고 봅니다.
I have no idea whether the North Korean authorities, I don't think anyone can know, are they going to go the route of Vietnam or are they going to go the route of China or neither.
다만 외부 사회에서 매우 적극적이고 집요하게 요구하면 김정은도 결국은 그 길을 따를 수밖에 없다고 저는 생각합니다.
But again, this pressure is very, significant and will move Kim Jong-un. If he wants to be part of this international community, the international community needs to push back against him to follow these norms, and that way we can bring about this economic change. But that's going to be the only way.
왜냐하면 김정은은 그렇게라도 해서 경제 문제를 해결하지 못하면 정권과 체제도 유지할 수 없는 상황에 내몰려 있다고 저는 보기 때문입니다.
Sungju, can you take that?
Sorry?
No, that's okay. 다시 한번.
왜냐하면
I was thinking.
그렇게 양보를 해서라도 경제 문제를 해결하지 않으면 더 이상 정권과 체제를 유지할 수 없는 상황에 사실 김정은은 직면해 있다고 생각합니다.
Well, if international company go to North Korea, then they kind of keep requesting towards government. You have to change economic systems, and then North Korea will change gradually their policies.
Yeah, right.
Sure.
Yeah, it's different.
Without Kim Jong-un delivering economic assistance or development, he would not be able to maintain his legitimacy.
Interesting.
Thank you.
Interesting. So maybe we're saving the Kim Jong-un regime.
That's
Interesting.
great. Yeah, right.
Thought pattern there. Before we go to questions, get your questions ready.
Maybe just
Oh.
one add.
Okay,
yeah,
quickly.
before I forget. So I'd like to just quickly mention about the needs to use the ILO standard. Yeah, in this chance, because it is likely to see a possibility. This considered as any state or the international community considered to provide the international bank fund or the loan for the economic development, but it should be a rights-based approach, and the participations of the local people and expected beneficiaries is important, and also more importantly, to see more possibility of change is that the demanding or the preconditioning of the direct payments to the local people, and also demanding the collective bargaining process, and then demanding also the external bodies as monitoring, and the feedback process, and then demanding the procedural change of North Korea's the policies as well.
Excellent, excellent. Before we go to questions, we're lucky enough to have two actual defectors on our panel, and I find it very important and powerful to hear a little bit about their personal stories, and I'm wondering if I can ask you, each of you, to share the story of how you escaped from North Korea.
It's a long story. So I try to make it short. Well, I was born in Pyongyang, and when I lived there until when I was 10. My father made a mistake 1997, saying there is no hope in North Korea. So my family, and then that sentence was reported reported to the government by his colleague. So that's why my entire family was expelled to different city, which is called Gyeongsang, located in northern part of North Korea. Then we stayed there together about a year. Well, I was really shocked because when I was in Pyongyang, North Korea is the best country in the world, and then the strongest country in the world. But in the reality, it was totally different because I saw beggars on the street, and then the condition of house was so bad. So I questioned my father, what's going on here? Are we still in North Korea? He said, yes, this is the reality of North Korea. But I was really too young to understand the reality. So and then there I watched the public execution because one day I went to school, and then the school principal announced that entire school will go to public execution site to watch public execution. I was really shocked because when I was in Pyongyang, I never heard that. And then we went there. There was 2 criminals, so-called in North Korean side. So they were shot. They were shot by police officers. And then my father decided to go to China for food in 1998. And then my father left home, and then he didn't come back. And then my mom also left the home for food, the same reason. Then since then I don't know where she is now. So I'm looking for her. That's why I'm working with the Citizens Alliance for North Korean Human Rights to rescue North Korean defectors suffering in China. So and then I spent 4 years on the street with my friends, and my main business was pickpocketing. Pickpocketing was my main business. So because that time I didn't have any choice. So during the day we went to markets to steal something from merchants. Also we helped the merchants. And then during the night we went to the train station to sleep over there. And then there was a prayer every night before we go to sleep. We want to see more death bodies next morning, because in the morning usually police officers come to a train station and then they kick the people who is sleeping, and then there are 2 dead bodies in every morning, and then the police officers picked us, guys, you have to move these bodies to a certain place, and we had to move that bodies to a certain place. Then they give us like bread, corn bread. So that's why our prayer was like that. We want to see more dead bodies next morning. So I spent 4 years on the street, and I lost 2 brothers, 2 friends on the street. 1999, his name's Myung-chul, and 2001, I lost another one. His name was Yong-bum. And then my father, he got to South Korea. He managed to come to South Korea in 1999, and then he tried to bring me to South Korea, sending brokers. So my father sent he sent 7 brokers to North Korea. 7th broker found me in North Korea, and then I crossed border with them. The first broker bribed the soldier who was protecting border. So money talks, even in North Korea. And then I went to China by crossing border. The river I swam. And then I went to Yanji, which is a Chinese city in China. And then I met another broker. He made a South Korean fake passport. So my father paid a lot of money on me to bring me to South Korea. So it was $25,000 US. That time it was 2002. So whenever I made a mistake in front of my father, he keeps saying, "The son, you are really expensive. Remember, don't screw it up. Study hard." So and then I went to airport in Daren, and then there was a woman who was checking passport. She was broker as well. I went to first gate, and then she looked at my passport, and then she gave me a sign, "You go." So she was part of broker group, and then I got to South Korea, and then I saw my father. Between that, it was a long story. I met my father, and then we cried, and then I tried to adjust to South Korea. I finished my I studied. I went to high school there, and then I also went to a university there, and then I completed my bachelor in South Korea, bachelor degree in South Korea. Also, I went to I did an MA in United Kingdom on scholarship, UK government, and then also I will start my PhD program from this September in United States on a Fulbright scholarship. So I will go to George Mason, study in conflict analysis and resolution from this September. So I'm really thankful to U.S. citizen because I mean I'm studying on your money. Thank you.
이제 저는 그 고향이 이제 함경북도 회령시라는 이제 정말 탄광 마을에서 태어났습니다.
I'm originally from the city of Haeryong in North Hamgyong Province.
뭐 외국에서 태어난지야 뭐 저도 알 수가 없죠. 이제 더 좋은 이제 남한 땅에서 태어났으면 좋았을 텐데 이제 저는 이제 그곳에서 태어났습니다.
Seongju.
Well, I don't know why I was born there. So I hope to born in South Korea.
저는 어렸을 때 이제 행복과 이제 평등에 대해서 이제 배웠던 기억이 납니다. 행복함과
When I was
평등.
young, I was taught by the government about happiness and equality.
근데 이제 그 평등한 그 북한 땅에서 저는 이제 평양에 한 번도 못 가봤습니다.
Despite hearing about this talk of equality, I was never allowed to go to Pyongyang.
왜냐하면 아무나 들어갈 수가 없는 것이죠.
Nobody can go there unless you're, a citizen of Pyongyang.
김일성 신이 있고 김정일 이제 김정은이 있기 때문에 저희는 못 갑니다.
I couldn't go there because of the regime, because of Kim Il-sung, Kim Jong-il, Kim Jong-un, this Kim family.
그런 상황에서도 행복하다고 자꾸 이제 쇠뇌하니까 행복한 줄 알았고요.
I brainwashed by the government because all North Korean people are happy.
이유도 모르고 이제 미국 사람들은 나쁘다고 해가지고 진짜 나쁜 줄 알았어요.
Without any reason, I hate Americans because I was brainwashed that Americans are our sworn enemies.
제가 이제 그 북한을 이제 탈출하게 된 이제 계기는 북한에서 저는 이제 장애를 갖게 되었습니다.
The reason I ended up leaving, decided to defect from North Korea is because I'm handicapped. I have a handicap.
행복한 그 땅에서 이제 먹을 것을 주지 않아서 이제 많은 사람들이 굶어 죽었죠.
I'm in this so-called happy land, but people are starving. I have nothing to eat. Nothing's given to me or provided.
저희 할머니도 굶어서 돌아가셨고.
My grandmother died of starvation.
그 당시 저도 이제 영양실조 이제 걸렸었고요.
I was extremely malnourished.
그때 제 나이가 13살, 14살이었습니다.
I was around 13 or 14.
먹고 살기 위해서 학교를 갈 수가 없었고요.
I was so weak and malnourished from hunger. I couldn't even go to school.
먹을 것을 구하기 위해서 이제 열차에서 석탄을 훔쳐서 팔아야 했습니다.
In order to try to, get food to eat, I stole coal from trains.
그러다 이제 열차에서 떨어져 가지고 사고를 이제 당하게 되었죠.
When I was trying to steal this coal from one of these train cars, I fell and had an accident.
저는 그때 이제 사고로 왼쪽 다리를 이제 열차에 잘려졌고 이제 손도 이제 그때 이제 열차에 다 잘려졌습니다.
This is how I lost my left arm and my left leg.
그리고 이제 마취제도 제대로 없는 상황에서 수술을 받아야 했고요.
I had to get these amputated after the accident, but there was no anesthesia.
항생제도 이제 없는 현실이었습니다.
There's also no antibiotics.
다리가 이제 염증으로 썩어 들어와서 그 고통이 지금도 이제 기억이 납니다.
I have such a vivid memory that I still can't escape of how painful the agony that I went through in pain.
나의 삶에서 가장 지옥이었던 그 7개월 정도가 저희 삶에서 가장 지옥 같은 시간이었습니다.
Honestly, the 7 months that I dealt with that experience are the most hellish period of my life. I'll never forget.
그 뭐 장애인들의 인권이 천국이라고 하는 북한에서는 저에게 이제 먹을 걸 주지 않았죠.
Seongju.
According to North Korean government, it is a paradise for handicapped people, but the government didn't provide any food for me.
살 수 있는 그 무엇도 해준 것이 없습니다. 살 수 있는 아무것도 해주지 않았죠.
They don't give you anything to live.
배고파서 중국 가서 이제 식량을 구걸해 온 것이 제가 돼서 또 매맞기도 하고요.
I actually I crossed into China to find food, to try to find a way to live, and came back and was punished.
저는 이제 중국 땅에 처음으로 나와서 이제 알게 되었습니다. 이제 또 다른 세상이 있다는 사실에 대해서요.
Honestly, though, when I went to China, it was shocking. It was a completely other world.
그래서 저는 이제 2006년도에 이제 목발을 짚고 이제 목발을 짚고 이제 탈북했습니다.
So in 2006, after that experience, I decided to defect forever. And he is on crutches at this time, again, because of the handicap. So he crossed the Tumen River with these crutches.
예, 두만강을 건너야 했고 중국에서 이제 라오스, 미얀마, 태국이라는 이제 6,000km를 이제 돌아야 그 자유로 올 수가 있었습니다.
And I had to cross go through Laos and Myanmar and Thailand just to get to South Korea. This was like a journey basically of 6,000 kilometers.
그 힘든 과정을 겪어서 이제 자유를 찾았고요.
I did all of this just to find freedom.
내가 이제 그 찾은 그 자유를 북한 주민도 누려야 된다는 사실을 알게 되었습니다. 내가 살고 있는 이 자유에 대해서 자유를 북한 주민들도 누릴 그 권리가 있다고 이제 생각했어요.
I hope that North Korean people have freedom that I have.
I'm working for the same right. I believe that they have these same rights that I do.
그래서 뭐 장애인 또한 이제 그 뭐 탈북자 뭐 여러 가지 핸디캡을 겪으면서도 이제 대학 공부를 하고 또한 이제 북한 이제 탈북자들을 이제 구출하고 살리는 일을 지금 하고 있습니다.
So currently, I went to university. I'm, as a handicapped person, I was able to get an education in South Korea, and now I'm working to, as mentioned earlier, help young defectors integrate into life in South Korea, and as well rescue North Koreans who have defected in China and don't have a way to get to South Korea.
예, 그런 저에게 또 정말 민주주의 상을 주신 칼거시완 회장님께 감사드립니다.
I'm really thankful again to receive this award, especially to President Gershman today. This means a lot to me. I've come this far.
Thank you.
Okay, well, I want to be thank you so much for telling your stories. I want to be respectful of everybody's time, but we do have a few minutes left for questions. I would ask you to tell us your name, your affiliation if you have one, and please put any comments in the form of a question. And we'll start with you, sir, in the back. I'm sorry, behind you, and then we'll come back to you. Wait for the microphone.
Good morning. My name is Hidetoshi Hashimoto. I'm originally from Japan. I've been living in this country for many years. I'm author of the book Prospects for a Regional Human Rights Mechanism in East Asia. As you may know, Europe, Americas, Africa, regional intergovernmental human rights mechanisms have been functioning since the end of World War II. Regional human rights mechanisms are useful because they provide easier access to the people in the region, but also regional human rights mechanism has a stronger enforcement procedure compared to the United Nations mechanism. Now, North Korea, China, two worst human rights violating countries in the world community. Now, civil society like yours activity a positive development for eventually establishing regional human rights mechanism, because existence of civil society, NGO, are based on solely the right to freedom of association, and they are usually stronger supporters of human rights. Now, if you have any comments on what I have said so far, and also with regard to Japan, I would like to hear your any opinion. Thank you very much.
I would answer to that.
Please.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for raising the needs of the regional human rights protection mechanism. So might be reaching now to about 30 years or so. Yeah, discussing. There were these long discussions of the creation zone, and all the scholars and the human rights activists talk about that, and have been longing for that. There was this ongoing discussions, or in around 1996 or the 7, there was this sub-regional effort creating the Asia Human Rights Committee or the system. But it still would take long to see eventually the core system, the regional core system as well. So as many NGOs totally agree with that. And the willingness of the states in that region is in question. So look at that, Japan. Japan has the unaddressed problem with this sexual slavery issue. in the colonial time. China is, we know that this situation is another, the big dictatorship is building now. North Korea and South Korea might be potentially to some leadership, but yeah, the current administration is not addressing, not trying, push much about the North Korean human rights issue. So it's hard to find this who gonna be the real leadership, and so it's an ongoing process. But yeah, we are just fighting the ongoing situation in North Korea. So if that happens, that would be really ideal. But yeah, that effort should be maintained. But at the same time, we have to continue our job day to day. Thank you.
Excellent, excellent. Next question, sir. Please wait for the microphone.
I'm David Caprero with Global Peace Foundation and Brookings, and also, like Mr. Card, a Massachusetts root, and served in both Bush administrations, Jack Kemp. I was on the airplane with Mr. Lee coming from Seoul, actually Ulaanbaatar, Sunday morning, so I'm very honored to be here and congratulate Ned for this amazing forum. And my question to you and maybe the other Mr. Lee with Korean Unification Media or any of the wonderful guests is how do you see the link between North Korea human rights and an endgame of the Korean Peninsula for unification? And how important, indeed, is it for the U.S. and ROK to have such an endgame in a transactional type of summit or way forward based on principles and values? And just FYI, the forum in Mongolia that I returned on when I met him on the plane was a One Korea Forum, East-West Institute, GPF, and Action for Korea United. The Honorable Jung-go Lee from the Korean National Assembly and others were there, and East Asia scholars, basically, as UPI Wire story reported, called for such a link toward an end game. So, Mr. Lee, thank you, and any others that would like to address that important link.
네, 저 브루킹스 연구소에서 온 데이빗이고요. 뭐 서울에서 올 때 같이 오게 됐고요. 그 질문은 이겁니다. 북한 인권 문제하고 통일 관련해서 이 두 개를 어떻게 좀 긍정적으로 연결시키고 있을지, 아니면 또 뭐 달리 생각을 하는 게 있는지, 북한 인권과 통일 문제 관련해서 이런 뭐 관심 있는 사람들이 많기 때문에 그렇습니다.
Well, for the unification, human rights is really important. Well, we have to think about unification not only just for united country, not just only for political, the same political, same land and same people, same society. Well, for what? For it has to be for people. It has to be for their lives. Unification has to be for people on the Korean Peninsula, including South Koreans, including North Koreans. So we have to think about that. The unification now in my country. I mean, progressive and conservative, and they keep saying the unification for 70 years. But no one talk about human rights for people. Human rights issue, and then also unification issue in North Korea has to be like politicized. Human rights as well. So I hope to see the leader in my country that who is really, really working for human rights. At the same time, unification for people, not for their political interest.
Excellent.
그 통일이라는 것은 이제 한반도의 통일이라는 것은 이제 영토적인 통일을 이제 이야기합니다. 그런데
In South Korea, when we talk about human rights, when we talk about unification, it is more like land unified.
그런데 중요한 것은 이제 사람의 통일이죠. 사람과 사람이 하나가 되는 것이 통일입니다.
But in my opinion, the most important thing is this mini unification, the unification of the people.
통일과 인권이 이제 그 하나가 될 수 있는 기회가 있습니다.
But we have an opportunity to bring unification and human rights together.
우리가 통일됐을 때 이제 북한 주민들을 만나게 되겠죠.
We're going to obviously meet North Korean people if unification does happen.
북한 주민들이 남한 이제 주민들에게 묻습니다.
Well, after the day happened, North Korean people ask South Koreans.
우리가 죽어갈 때 당신들은 뭐 했냐고 묻죠.
Like Sungju said earlier, what did you do for me? How did you help this movement when I was in North Korea?
자유민주주의 시스템에서 우리가 더 먼저 살고 있는 우리는 그들에게 답변할 수 있는 책임이 있다고 생각합니다.
We have a responsibility as people that are already living in a free society to have an answer for them.
당신들을 사랑했다고, 당신들의 인권에 결코 우리는 침묵하지 않았다고 이야기해야 된다고 생각합니다.
Well, we have to tell them that we loved you and that we fight for your rights.
그것이 이제 통일과 인권이 하나가 될 수 있는 유일한 길이라고 생각합니다.
So in that sense, I feel that that
통일과 이제 인권, human rights,
so unification and human rights, we can see them through the same lens in this sense.
Excellent. I think that's a great place to stop. I just want to again emphasize that what we've heard here today is that, you know, this historic time in our U.S. Policy towards North Korea is an opportunity and a risk. It can either greatly elevate the lives of millions of people, or it can condemn them to further suffering. The question that we ended with is the right one. What can we do? And thanks to our panelists, we've got a lot of ideas. Now go forth and do those things.
Let me first of all thank everyone for coming, and really thank you, Josh, and our 4 panelists for a really extraordinary session. You know, as you know, and let me note now that there will be the award ceremony at the Longworth House office building this evening from 5 to 7. So everyone, please come to that. I just want to make, you know, one thought in closing. You know, Josh asked Sung-Ju Lee and my dear friend Ji Sung Ho just to tell us about themselves and their history. And it's, you know, it's quite extraordinary when you hear something like that. And I know there are a lot of people who, and even in South Korea, that worry, you know, what's going to happen if, you know, North Korea, if the regime falls, and they worry about whether the people of North Korea have been so injured by 70 years of this kind of a cruel dictatorship, even to the point where there's difference in height and weight between South Koreans and North Koreans, that the idea of their adjusting to life in a modern society is inconceivable, and they worry about what South Korea would have to do in order to pay for the rebuilding of North Korea. But when I see people like Ji Sung Ho and Sung-Ju Lee, and they tell their story, it just fills me with absolute hope for the future of the people of North Korea. Because if you can be where you are now from where you came, I think it's a kind of a miracle, and I think it should give us all the feeling that there is hope for North Korea, and in a larger sense, you know, really hope for our troubled world. So thank you very much.